All right, guys. Really excited to bring y'all this video. Scott absolutely kills it. Talks about some really great rookie strategy and really a couple things that I didn't really think of myself. So y'all are really going to enjoy it. Hopefully y'all get a lot out of it. Just want to make the announcement. Thank you so much for blowing up yesterday's video. Y'all did a fantastic job making sure that it got the requisite likes to still get recommended in the algorithm. I know that I've been kind of hammering this down, whether that's through Discord or whether that's through the 2 videos yesterday. But if we're going to do 2 videos a day for y'all, what we really need is for y'all to make sure y'all hit that like, make sure y'all leave a comment, just because if we do 2 videos a day, YouTube is not going to want to promote our videos. I don't know why. That's just how the algorithm works. We've done this multiple times before, and the only way it's going to work this time is if you make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure you like every video you watch. As always, Scott is a fantastic analyst, and if you want more of his work, make sure you go down below in the description. There's going to be a link to both of his podcasts. One's Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast, the other is a high stakes redraft podcast. I'll make sure I indicate which one is which. But thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the video.
Hey everyone, back with another video talking a little bit about some super flex rookie prospects. Check out part one of this video that dropped a few days ago. Discussed quite a few players in there. So I wanted to add some players to the list. I had some requests in the Discord channel for players to cover. So just wanted to talk a little bit about some specific players, where they're currently slotting in terms of NFL mock drafts, also ADP for super flex leagues, and then finally talk a little bit of strategy regarding the 2020 picks, because this is a good topic because I've been talking about this on some other places, but I've also been thinking about it a lot and haven't really been able to put it into words to really understand, maybe some of the hesitation on 2020 rookies, given what's going on the NFL schedule right now. How do we value 2021 picks? Typically, in my mind, it is already very set. But we may have to tweak that a little bit. I may have to tweak my process a little bit with that this year, just given with what's going on. So I'll touch on that at the end of the video. But let's talk a little bit of players first. And the first player that I wanted to talk about that was mentioned was Anthony Mcfarland. Now, Anthony McFarland, I was big on Anthony McFarland last year and took him in a couple Devy leagues. And I think the biggest thing that's going to hold Anthony McFarland back is going to be probably his production in college, from a standpoint of, he really never held the backfield enough to say that he can do it in the NFL. And then if you look at his pass game work, Anthony McFarland, when you actually watch him, looks like a great receiver, but he didn't produce that way in college. And if you actually look back at 2018, he only had 7 receptions, whereas Ty Johnson actually was the one that was used as the pass catcher in 2018. So if you kind of look at that, you don't really think of Ty Johnson as a great receiver either, but he played that role over Anthony McFarland. So I'm kind of a little concerned about how he fits into the NFL. Is he a satellite back? I've mentioned him numerous times on numerous videos that he's a satellite back, but we still haven't seen him actually be that at the college level. It's not like he's this elite receiver that is not going to be able to be an early down back. He's actually a decent between the tackles runner, but he doesn't have the size to do that. So how does he profile? The player profile has him comparable to Deandre Washington. I think that's decent, but if you look at Deandre Washington, he was massively productive in college. I mean, he clearly was a good receiver in college. So I see the comparison, but I don't necessarily have the confidence that he's necessarily going to be like that at the next level. But still, I like Anthony McFarland. And if you look at currently where he's projected to come off the board, I think he's probably going to be a fourth round pick. And if he's a fourth round pick, I would probably be interested in him somewhere in the mid to late third round of super flex drafts. Now, you're going to have him in the same range as other guys like Benjamin, Keyshawn Vaughn, Zach Moss, Darrington Evans, maybe Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, Lamichael P Ryan. I mean, there's a ton of names. Joshua Kelly could be thrown in there as well. There's a ton of running backs that could go in this range, but we know some of them are probably going to drop to round 5, round 6, round 7. I don't know who the names are going to be. I said this last night on Twitter that I think it's very difficult, for as much as people love to scout running backs. I think it's very difficult to project, who the running back 6 through 12 is going to be in this class. Maybe not from a dynasty standpoint, because we already know who people like and who people don't like from a dynasty standpoint. But from an NFL standpoint, who is going to be the sixth running back off the board? I'm pretty confident that it's going to be the big five, are going to be the top five. You should talk about Taylor, Swift, Dobbins, Edwards-Helaire, and Cam Akers. But after that, who's running back six? Who's running back 12? How do they slot in off the board in terms of NFL draft capital? We don't really know. So I think that's the biggest thing with McFarland. If he lands in a spot, maybe like Tampa Bay or the Rams or something like that, I could see him taking over a role where he is the pass catcher, but really just trying to wonder where he fits in. So that's where I'd slot him in, late third round rookie drafts right now in Superflex. But stay tuned because he could be either bumped up or he could be entirely pushed down depending on his NFL draft capital. The next one I wanted to talk about is kind of in the same vein as Anthony McFarland, and that's Lamichael P Ryan. And I've talked about Lamichael P Ryan before on the channel, and I've talked about him in a few other places as well. The thing about Lamichael P Ryan that I don't necessarily like is he's 6 months older than Anthony McFarland, so he's a 4-year player. Don't necessarily like running backs coming in that are already, basically he'll be 25 and a half or 22 and a half by time the season starts. So it's not a death knell for a running back, but I prefer my running back to be 21 when they play in their first year in the NFL. Now, the thing that Lamichael P Ryan has that Anthony McFarland doesn't is, despite him never, and again, I'm a Kentucky fan, you guys know that. Um, I was never impressed with Michael P. Ryan in college. He was never a running back where, when you're playing Florida, you felt you had to really worry about, being a big factor. So that's one thing, is just from actually watching him, he was never even considered like a shoe-in, really good SEC player. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing would be he never had more than 170 touches in a season. So again, he's clearly not going to be a guy that's going to come in and you're going to expect to get, even 150 touches in an NFL season. So it's really going to be, what is his role going to be? Now, his senior year at Florida, they brought in a couple other running backs, and he did catch 40 passes. So that's nice to see. I mean, it's definitely nice to see a running back that catches that type of volume. So that makes me confident that he can play that role in the NFL. And unlike McFarland, he's actually a little bit bigger. I mean, he weighed in at 216 pounds. So that's a good 12, 14 pounds bigger, than somebody like Anthony McFarland or somebody like Eno Benjamin. So that's a benefit to him. Darrington Evans, the same thing. Those guys are range. So I like that, from a size standpoint. Again, it's just what's the draft capital going to look like for Lamichael P. Ryan? And then also, what is his role going to be? I think he has a better chance of being a satellite back, but at the same time, he has size that would be that he could be also used as a lead back. So again, depends on what the NFL thinks about him. I think he'll get drafted higher than Anthony McFarland. But does that mean that I'm necessarily going to prefer him over McFarland, depending on their landing spot? I don't know. I think it'll probably be about a mid third round pick or so for Lamichael P. Ryan. But again, same applies with McFarland. It's going to be all about X, and those are going to be the guys that I probably slot in the third of Superflex rookie drafts. Let's talk a little receiver. I did talk about a ton of receivers the other day, but we'll talk about a couple more at this point. And the first one had a request to talk about Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims, I was warming up to a lot after the combine. I mean, I think everybody really raised him up after his combine performance. He ran a 4.38 at the combine and basically crushed it from a standpoint. All of his metrics were in the 90th percentile, except for his agility score. But now you're looking at a value spike for him that's putting him up into the late first, early second round range. I think for most people, he's a top 6 receiver off the board. So after the top 2 with Judy and Lamb, you have Jefferson, you have Ruggs, you have Rager, and you have Denzel Mims. Those seem to clearly be the next 4 for people. Some may have T. Higgins in there as well. But regardless, he's going to cost you in a super flex draft. He's going to cost you a top 15 pick to get. Now, one concern, and I'll hit on this a little later when we talk about draft picks. So Denzel Mims is already 22 and a half years old. He will turn 23 in October. And I've heard numerous people, and again, I'm not a huge film watcher. I'm much more into judging my receivers based on their analytics, based on their age, based on their draft capital. I mean, that's typically how I will formulate my tiers and my board. But I've heard multiple people talk about, well, Denzel Mims he's a guy that's not going to be an immediate contributor to the NFL. He may need a redshirt year. And that's fine. It's not, again, his value isn't shot because he's going to be a 23-year-old receiver that doesn't produce in year one. But if I'm picking a guy at this range, what am I looking for? So if I'm just comparing profiles, and You guys know my stance. I play in a lot of leagues, so I'm typically looking at this from a pure value lens. So what do I want if I draft a receiver in the late first, early second of a super flex draft? What do I want? I'm not as concerned about the points that that player is going to score me year one. I am much more concerned about what is that value of that player going to look like after 1 year. So I want the AJ Brown. I want the DJ Moore. I want the guy that even if they're not a ironclad starter for me every single week, I want the guy that the next year people are going to be going, this is the next big thing. This is the guy that I need to give up 2 first round picks for. Or this is the guy I need to buy in year two before they have that massive year three breakout. So that's what I want. And if I'm looking at a potential red shirt with somebody like Denzel Mims, I don't necessarily want to invest in a guy that's already going to be 23 right around when the season starts. In that case, I would probably lean other players in that same range over him. I would definitely lean Justin Jefferson over him, but I would probably break the tie with other players that are in the same tier. I'm not a huge supporter of somebody like Henry Ruggs, but I think you'd have to lean Henry Ruggs with his draft capital and his age over somebody like Denzel Mims. Same thing with Jalen Rager. You look at Jalen Rager, and he is a good 15 months younger than Denzel Mims. So the same thing applies to that. So I think you just have to consider that, especially if we know that he lands in a place with either a quarterback that has difficulty getting a quick rapport with somebody, like if he were to land in Green Bay or something like that. I don't know what I could expect from him in year one, but I think his value would reflect already that risk priced in. So if I know I'm drafting a receiver, just keep that in mind with somebody like Mims when you're breaking the tie with him based on his age and based on what type of value you can get after year one. Because again, this is dynasty. This is not draft and hope those guys score points on my team for 10 years. This is draft for value. And with so many receivers, you guys can go back and look at any of the stuff that I've talked about on Dynasty and Chill and on this channel. Receivers are so deep right now in the NFL. I'm looking for the ones that blow up. I'm looking for the ones that hit AJ Brown status. Right now, AJ Brown's actually a sell. If he's a top 10, top 12 receiver, sell him because you can get another player that's going to produce the same as AJ Brown that may have a higher target floor than AJ Brown, and you can get a significant piece on top of it. So that's the way that I'm looking to play at receivers, especially when you're in a ton of leagues. You're really just looking to cash out on these guys, except for in the few select places that you want to hold on to them long term. So that's my word of caution with Denzel Mims. So